Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and joining me today is my husband Jacob. And we're going to be discussing why we don't incorporate our own faith practices into our homeschool. So I did a recent homeschool mom confession video, which I'll link up above. And one of the things I talk about is, so we are a Christian. If you're new to our channel, we are Christian, specifically Lutheran, the ELCA denomination. And when in that confession video, I talk about as Christians, and I think it's very popular in the homeschooling Christian community to memorize scripture, and that's something we don't do in our homeschool, and we don't do in our household in general. And I did get some questions about that. I got questions on, so what do we incorporate with our faith, either into our homeschool, or what does our faith practices look like in our household? And, do we encourage scripture reading? Do we encourage our children to read the Bible? Do we do Bible studies? That kind of. So I thought it'd be good to make a video explaining that all, so, save you some time in the comments. But also I brought Jacob in because not only is he the other parent, but he's also an ordained pastor. So I think he can kind of give some more theological information towards that. But to the main reason why we don't incorporate our own faith practices in our homeschooling. Now, I have many videos where I talk about why, as a Christian, I choose secular curriculum. Feel free to check those out. They go more into detail and why we prefer to choose secular curriculum even though we are Christian. So we choose to not incorporate our own faith practices in our homeschool, but we do incorporate learning about other religions and cultures in our homeschool, and you can see those in my videos as well. We talk about every December, we pick a specific religious holiday or celebration and we learn about that. So we've done Judaism in the past. Last year we did St. Lucia Day. So we do incorporate that aspect into our homeschool. And I think one of the reasons we handle it that way is I was recently watching a little snippet from Julie Bogart and she was referring to her critical thinking book. And she's talking about how we don't really need to teach our kids our worldview, our thoughts, our opinions because they live with us, especially if they're homeschoolers. They're with us all the time. They know what we think. They know how we see the world. They understand our perspectives. And that's not the basis of education. The point of education was to expose the student to other ideas, other perspectives, other cultures, because we live on a planet full of very diverse people, and having an understanding of different cultures and ideas and perspectives and how to respectfully listen to people and have conversations with people. And it's not that you're right or wrong, that it's just learning more about it. And that's the goal of education, to expose you to things you're not necessarily familiar with. And I thought that was spot on of why we don't necessarily incorporate our own faith practices into our homeschooling, because we very much bring in other cultures and ideas. So what does our faith practices look like? Because one of the comments was, do we encourage our kids to read the Bible, or do we do any type of Bible study or anything like that? And with that, we do a family during Advent and during Lent. We use a resource from the ELCA, completely free. I'll link it down below. And you can watch my videos where I talk about what we do for December to get more into detail with that. But I think they're really great resources, and we do that as a family. But other than that, we don't do any devotionals, we don't do any Bible time or anything like that as a family. And I think the main reason, at least, again, I can only speak for myself, you can jump in when you have thoughts on it, but the main reason I think that I don't feel that is necessary is because our children go to church every Sunday and Sunday school throughout the academic school year. And they've done that since birth, pretty much. I mean, I take about 2 weeks off and then I return to church, but my kids have always attended church. And when I say my kids attend church, I don't mean they go to children's church. They don't go to a nursery. They don't go to a separate area where kids and adults are, in different parts. They actually go to worship services. They actually sit in the pews and are part of the worship service. I think that's kind of different. I think you don't often see really young kids, because my kids are 10, 6, and 3. And again, they've gone since birth and up. So I've gone the, infant to toddler to 10-year-old in the pew. So I've seen a lot of it. But you don't often see the young kids in church. And I think that's kind of disappointing. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think it's really hard as a parent to manage kids in a church environment. I think there's a lot of judgmental people in those pews that kind of give you the side eye when your child is loud, or heaven forbid, they drop something. So I can understand the uncomfortableness of this, but I think personally for me, it's very important that my children are a part of the worship service, that they feel that they are a part of the congregation, because they are valuable members. And I know there are some churches, we've certainly been a part of them, that they don't value children, that they don't see them as equal members of the congregation. And that could be, because they're young, or it could be because they're not financially contributing. Whatever the reason, children often kind of get pushed to the side, and it's the children are meant to be seen, not heard mentality. I completely disagree with that. So are my kids sometimes disruptive in church? Oh God, absolutely, yes. Now, my 2 girls were, they were really, I would say, pretty good in church. But my 3-year-old, he throws that all to the wind. He's in the aisles. I don't know who designed our church, but the floors are slightly tilted. So if you drop anything, it rolls all the way down through all the pews. So if he has like a little Matchbox car or like a pencil and he drops it, you can hear it roll all the way to the front of the pews. And luckily, people are very understandable. There will always be curmudgeon people that have an issue with anything being different in church, and sometimes that includes kids. But I think it's very important for them to be a part of that, because, my oldest, she didn't memorize the Lord's Prayer or the Apostles' Creed. She didn't do it from a book. She knows it from memory from just attending church. And I didn't realize she knew it from memory until I actually saw her saying it without looking at the, bulletin. She knows these things. My 6-year-old knows a lot of hymns, and she sings them even when they're not seasonally accurate. She likes a lot of more Christmassy hymns. She'll sing them all the time, and that's the point. I think that's the point, being a part. They're living into their faith, not just opening a book and reading about it or memorizing it. They're living their faith. That's why I don't think it's necessary for them to have specific Bible time where they have to sit down and read and do any of that. And in Sunday school, again, they go every Sunday. Even my 3-year-old goes. And mind you, I've taught Sunday school for about 9 years now. So even before they were old enough to attend Sunday school, they were still there because they were with mom. So they know the stories, they know the activities. And again, our Sunday school isn't, memorize this, or you get a prize if you can recite this scripture verse. It's discussion based. It's talking about the story. And what do you think? Opening that conversation. Because I think I was watching a video not too long ago about this mom was talking about how she was really disappointed that when kids tend to grow up, so the younger generations don't return to church. And she was like, it's because they don't know the scripture. They can't recite it. And for me, personally, I don't think that's why. I think one of the reasons why younger generations are turning away from the church or not returning is because they don't see it as a place of acceptance. If you grow up in a church where, the space is not accepting to you, I'm just talking about being a child in general. Like, you can't make a peep, you can't make any noise, you can't be yourself. You just sit there for an hour, daydreaming, because you're not even really paying attention. That's not the point. The point is, if they're in an environment where they are excited to be there, that they feel like they're part of something, I think that is a connection. That is starting that journey and relationship with God instead of forcing it on them. And my kids, since they attend church every Sunday, they see a lot of these people in the congregation more than they see a lot of their relatives. And that's the truth. So for example, when my oldest was in kindergarten, there was Grandparents' Day. And we didn't have any grandparents that lived close to us, so our parents lived farther away. So she asked a couple from the congregation to come, and they did. And not only were they grandparents for her that day, but they were grandparents to all the kids that didn't have grandparents that could show up that day. And that's what I'm talking about. It's about relationships and building those relationships. And they see these people not as just, every Sunday we sit and we listen. This is our church family, and that's really what it is. And my kids are there all the time. And some of that is because, yes, they're pastor kids. They're going to be in the church a lot. But, when we set up for events or something, both my 10 and 6-year-old know the proper place setting and how to do it because an older member of the congregation showed them how to do that. So it's just little snippets like that where I think it's living into your faith instead of just reading about it. So what are your thoughts on that, Jacob?
There's a lot there.
I know. I had to get it out. I had to get it all out.
So, I guess I'll start with the most recent piece. I think one of the biggest, most significant things for those that are actively engaged in a mainline tradition, whether that be Catholicism, Anglicanism, Lutheranism, Presbyterianism, the entirety of the mainline spectrum, when it's at its best, it is living to develop a faith community, not a single individual. And I think that's where some of the disconnect in the present day is, because there's this hyper focus on the present evangelicalism, which is super interested in my own personal Jesus. And when it's solely about the individual and God, then it becomes this almost legalistic contract thing where you have to do certain things a certain way, you have to believe a certain way, and you don't actually live out your faith. You're more interested in, do I have enough get into heaven tokens to move forward? And that I think is kind of a foundational level about some of this stuff too. I like what you said about the Bible stuff with regard to memorizing. For our family, we haven't had to have those here memorize this passage thing because we want you to know it by heart. Because when you're constantly involved in an active faith community, you're regularly engaging in Scripture, whether that's on Sunday morning, hearing the parts of Scripture that are used in worship, whether you're in Sunday school, actively engaging and learning about the stories that were talked about during that lesson, whether you have younger children that aren't necessarily old enough to be in Sunday school yet, but are tagging along with you because you don't have a babysitter and they're coming with you to Bible study night.
We do that too. I take the kids with me to Bible study.
When your life is wrapped around a faith community, those things naturally progress, and it's not something that has to be forced.
Yes.
It grows out of how you live your life. So that's a piece to it. And even with our kids as they get older, in a few years, less than a few years, our oldest is going to be starting confirmation and going through studying the catechism and some of those deeper explorations of Scripture and our faith tradition.
But even that'll be so much discussion based.
Right, and it'll be
in a
with
group setting.
Other folks that are actively exploring that at the same time too. So it's not a hyper focused everything happens in the home sort of situation, because that's not how faith community actually works, actually develops in all that stuff. I wonder sometimes if some of the hyperemphasis in homeschool settings is also related to a possibility that particular group that is homeschooling, or that particular family that's homeschooling, is also actively involved in a home church model too, which is kind of popular these days. I've got my own kind of qualms around that, just because I think that while certainly anybody can go and pick a Bible off a shelf, necessarily understanding what they're reading is not necessarily all that great. And I know that somebody somewhere is like, oh, you sound like you're a pompous, arrogant elitist. How dare you tell me I can't just pick something up and fully understand the inerrancy of it all.
I think you make a good point, because I mean, there are contextual things that the average person wouldn't know, translation things that the average person wouldn't know, and that's one of the things I think that's great.
There's a whole lot of bias that goes into so many of the translations that are in circulation nowadays too.
And little side note to that, one of the reasons that we don't have any specific type of devotional or Bible study is because I've looked at a lot of different ones and I'm not a fan of them, honestly. A lot of them are, like you said, really biased. And honestly, it's hard enough to get homeschoolers in general to look at, who's writing the curriculum, the credentials of this person. When you turn it into anything religious-based, Bible study, anything like that, nobody's looking at who's writing it, because it's like, oh my God, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. They're not educated. What they're saying is just blatantly wrong. I'm sorry.
And truth be told, there is an abundance of time where mainline traditions have missed the boat on having resources available for families to do devotions together.
Yeah.
I'll be upfront about that. I do like that our tradition, the ELCA, the Augsburg Fortress Publishing House, they do put out some really wonderful devotion tools. However, they tend to be geared towards a older age group, and most of the time young adults to the geriatric, and a lot of the younger children related stuff tends to be incorporated in Sunday school curriculum and Vacation Bible School curriculum, and those kinds of group setting type of things. So yeah, there is that part to it. And at the same time, going back to what I said earlier, when you're living in a faith community where those things are actively, vibrantly happening all the time, you don't necessarily need to have that extra supplemental thing, because chances are you probably are having some of those conversations at home anyhow.
Naturally, organically.
Yeah, and I know. Well, not so much our youngest, because he's just starting to become verbal, but both of our daughters, they'll ask random questions, and we'll sit down and we'll talk through it, and of course be curious about, so what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's one thing we are very good at, is we're not saying it's this way or that way. You will find your own relationship with God, the faith practices, Sunday school, all the things we do are in the Lutheran tradition. But that doesn't mean that's necessarily your path. And I think that scares a lot of parents, the idea that their kids won't be Christian or won't be a certain type of Christian. And I think that was mentioned in that video that I watched about this mom, was really, honing in on scripture, that and I think it comes from a place of fear, honestly. Fear that your child won't be who you think they will be. Fear that they won't turn out or be the perfect Christian that you envision them to be. And I don't think we should be making decisions out of fear. I think we should be making decisions out of love. And it's complete. I think there are people out there that are looking for that loving relationship with God and their kids. And it's not going to be a forced relationship.
Well, and I can speak from my own experience in parochial school settings, where your Bible class teacher for homework says, hey, you have to memorize these 6 verses or this chapter or something like that. And, there's that terror, because now we're talking about not just your education, but also your religious upbringing, that if I don't know this exactly the right way, not only am I going to be letting down my teacher and my parents and God, but it creates a level of anxiety that then prevents you from really enjoying or engaging with what is that's being talked about.
Yeah.
And particularly when you get into just rote memorization.
Yeah.
Oh man, I so many times I remember we'd get a passage, and I'm sure that the teacher was thinking that, okay, well, this passage relates to something else. I know always leading up to like the Christmas program when I was in grade school, elementary school, we would get chunks of the nativity narrative that we would have to memorize. And, you know, for me, and I know some of my other classmates expressed it too, it was terrifying because in addition to all the other busyness of getting ready for Christmas, then all of a sudden you've got things that you need to know for the Christmas program, and then you got this passage of scripture that's kind of related to it, but you really know that you have to have, you know, and the shepherds were watching their flocks by night, and it had to be like just right, because heaven forbid you got home after school that day and you started reading in the NRSV and not the NIV, and you go and you say what you read and memorized in the one, but then got marked down because it wasn't the same as what was the other.
I think you make a really good point that sometimes it's more about the parents and what they want and what they want their children to be. And I can speak to myself. I'm not a parent that's here to tell my children who to be, you know, who to love, who to, you know, be friends with. I'm not here to tell them those things. Those are things they will figure out for themselves. But I think there is this really strong hold of religion and parents using that as a way to, I want you this way.
And not everybody learns the same way too. Don't get me wrong. There are probably those folks that feel really engaged, that they can rattle off whole verses, whole chapters of some part of the Bible, and that's great. I'm happy for you. I'm happy that that's meaningful for you. Just because you can do that, though, doesn't necessarily mean that someone that can't isn't actively engaging.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. You're not a better Christian if you can rattle off Bible verses. You're not a better Christian if you do like a devotional every day. There's no like better or worse. Like there's no like, ooh, I got extra reward points.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that being able to have a deep conversation with a family member or a Sunday school classmate or a member of your church or faith community about a passage can be just as significant or perhaps even more meaningful than just being able to say something verbatim.
Yeah.
And I think also that because we are made in the wonderfully intricate ways that we are, and we have the capacity for critical thinking skills, so long as we allow them to develop.
Yes.
that gives us an opportunity to also embrace the wideness of how vast and awesome God can be too, as opposed to just getting stuck in that pattern that God can only operate this way. You can only believe this way. I don't think that those things are particularly life-giving.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, for those folks that are like super religious salvatory, I don't think that when the time comes and the final horn is blown and you're standing before the pearly gates and St. Peter and the fat little chubby babies with wings are there, that they're going to be upset if you weren't able to recite some key passage of Scripture. And if that's how you believe that's how your God works, I'm sorry that your God's so small.
Yeah.
Boy, that sounded judgy. I don't mean it to sound that way. I really do think that God's more gracious than that.
Yeah, I think grace is a really good emphasis to put on, because when you got kids in church, you gotta have grace for that. They're gonna be 3. They're gonna be kids. You gotta have grace. I'm not a big fan of forcing Sunday school students to, like you said, participate in like the nativity scene or the Christmas program or anything like that, because I think when you're pushing for that relationship, that's when you're gonna get kids who grow up and be like, I don't want anything to do with this, or kids that grow up and realize that little bubble you created wasn't exactly truthful or honest, that there's a whole world outside that is different, and you can respect and understand people and still have your own faith practices. It's not the us versus them mentality.
And young children, and really from the moment you come into this world till you're probably in your later high school years, you're actively engaging in processes that develop your core moral foundation around things, which means that younger folks, probably to a greater extent than those of us who are much older, are really good at smelling BS.
Oh, yes.
And if you're part of a faith community and you're hearing stories about how God works in the world and the pieces of Scripture and all those things, and then the faith community, the church that you're part of, is not actively engaging in that kind of loving, caring work, then at some point a little flag goes up that says, why would I want to be part of something so hypocritical?
Yep. I think
why would I want to put effort into being part of something that is seemingly self-focused, rather than actually engaging in what it's talking about? Lots of layers there. I do know that within our own community, I have those conversations with folks, and there are those that are reluctant to talk about anything having to do with another faith tradition. And some of that, I think, is out of a genuine respect that they don't want to misrepresent who they're talking about. But other times, I think it's also because they don't want to inadvertently encourage their children to get excited or interested about another tradition. So about that, throughout the Hebrew Bible, which is often called the Christian Old Testament, and even throughout a lot of parts of the Gospels, you see folks interacting with people of various different faith traditions, and there's a lot of those conflictatory stories. Gotta go after the Amorites, gotta go after the Moabites, all that kind of stuff. But there's also those passages where folks of different faith traditions actually get along. And I don't think we spend a whole lot of time talking about that too. And if we do, it's a temporary footnote, and then we move on. So it's important to recognize that even within our sacred story, there are examples of people of different faith backgrounds getting along. Yeah. Even before the Exodus, Joseph was getting along pretty well with the Egyptians, even though they had a very different faith background. And for a while there, he and his brothers seemed to be doing just fine down there before some other things happened and they ended up enslaved. Likewise, when Jesus interacts with folks that are outside of the Judean faith community, he doesn't ignore them, doesn't avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the story of Jesus healing Jairus' daughter. Well, he was a Roman official, so that there's that extension there, that care and compassion for someone of a different tradition there. There's Jesus' interaction with the woman at the well, and she makes it very clear that, why are you talking to me? Because we're not of the same group, and Jesus doesn't really seem to care all that much about those boundaries. Jesus seems to be more focused about the relationship, and I think that it's faithful for folks who identify as Christian to be able to engage in meaningful relationship with folks that even aren't part of your own faith tradition, not as a way of forcing that person to convert, or making them feel bad that they don't believe the same way, or
just defending your own beliefs.
I'll get into the super apologetic thing where, so you think that your people lived on the back of a turtle? Well, that's nice there.
I love how you do different voices.
If Jesus wasn't judgmental about these things, why do we think it's okay to be?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think you make a good point. I was watching another video, and she said this homeschool mom was talking about one of the reasons she struggles with Christian curriculum in general is that it seems to put Christianity on a pedestal, and any other belief practice, whether that be your specific, denomination that you're associated with, or, other faith communities, is not as good. Christianity is up here and everything else is below it. And that's just not how I see things, and that's not how I want to teach our children about faith.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then there's those other trappings, too, where folks get really, really narrowly focused and then jump on the bandwagons of superiority or some kind of supremacy or history has great examples of how Christianity can be very anti-Semitic.
Yep.
Let's talk about that for a moment. Holy cow.
A whole different video.
But those kinds of things, I really do think they take away from being really engaged in the more meaningful faith development stuff. And in some ways I don't even think we recognize how impactful some of that stuff can be on a young person. Like I said before, the young people can be very good at spotting when something is BS. At the same time, they also really want to make sure that the people that they care about, their parents, their guardians, feel like they're being cared for too.
Yeah.
And there are those really, really unfortunate situations where a child, a young person, can be pushing through to make their parents happy, but really feel dead and empty inside.
Yeah.
Or worse than that, they push through and then they start to convince themselves that things that might really smell like it are okay.
Yeah.
And that's disturbing too, because there are so many examples of folks that convince themselves that something is true that's really not. Like, he was a psychologist or taught psychology, but he had this presentation about two circles,
Mm-hmm.
and one was one color and the other was another color. And right away at the beginning of the presentation, he goes, one of these circles is bigger than the other, and he polls the folks in the group as to who they think, which one is the other way, which one's the next. And then at the very end of this really long drawn out thing where everybody just about in the entire group is starting to believe that the one circle is really the larger of the two circles, he finally says they're both the same size. The only thing that's different is the color. And because you were hanging on every single word, because you felt that I was in a position of authority, that I was able to convince you to believe something that was totally bogus, you went with it. And I think sometimes that happens even unbeknownst to us within faith communities too. You know, we grow up believing that this has to be the thing. And because we don't want to let down our parents, because we don't want to let down our faith community, because we don't want to upset all these other people, we then start to believe that something that may very well be harmful or detrimental or not life-giving is just how it has to be.
Yep. I think you summed it out really nice.
And I'm sure that there are some folks that will want to counter that by saying, well, how then do you know? I don't. I think though that I would rather land on the side of being a little bit too gracious than the other side of things. I think that as a person of faith who wants to be able to impart to my children a sense of a God that really does love and care for not just my children, but this world.
Yeah.
However, I can try to give examples of a God that is more loving, more compassionate than I am, the better. And I think that allows my kids to feel more comfortable to grow into a relationship where they're more free to talk about, to search out, to want to learn more about their relationship with God and the rest of community, rather than feeling they need to shy away from or feel disconnected,
or they
from.
can't be who they are,
or that there's something so fundamentally horrible or flawed about them that God could never love them. And I have a really hard time conceiving of a loving God that would bring into being human beings that were incapable of being loved.
Yeah.
That just seems just really silly to me, and also it also kind of flies in the face of what Christ would have come into the world to do then too, because if the Christ moment, if the redemptive value of the resurrection is really as ultimate as it is, really has that much power over death and sin and all that other stuff, then there really isn't anything else that we can add to that equation, throw on top of that heap, that isn't covered by what Jesus did.
So that pretty much summarizes why we don't have a particular Bible study or devotional or anything we do within our own home, or why we don't incorporate it into our homeschool at all. It's just more about the relationship than anything else. So if you have any specific questions for us, leave in the comments below. If not, thank you for watching.